So my first year of teaching, I had a schedule where I saw my students every week. So basically I had like, this class came on Monday, and this class came on Tuesday, and this class came on Wednesday. Also, I should mention I teach elementary music. And that's pretty normal. That's usually what most schools have going on, or some kind of variation of that. And then in my second year of teaching, I got to pre-planning, and we got, our whole like pile of all the things. And one of the things was the special schedule, and I looked at the special schedule and saw something really confusing, which is that I was now gonna be teaching my kids for a week at a time. So basically, if I have Miss Geller's class this week, I see them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I don't see them again until I see all the other classes, because next week I have Miss Green's class, and the next week I have Miss Buffet's class, and yes, those are Friends characters. And so it would switch out that way, and I didn't even know, I didn't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I was just like, what in the world? Like, no earthly idea. This is gonna be horrible. Everything's gonna be awful. The kids aren't gonna remember anything. But to my surprise, it actually worked out pretty well. So recently I've heard more and more of you asking questions about this kind of rotation, because more and more of you are getting this kind of rotation. And so if you're watching this, I assume you have the week-long rotation, and you might feel how I felt, which was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What am I gonna do? So first of all, I just wanna tell you, like, don't freak out. It's gonna be better than you think. Secondly, in this video, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of this kind of rotation, things that you might want to look out for, and things to make it easier, because it actually can be really, really good if you embrace it. I promise. I now have, like a 6-day rotation. So like, I see, your day 1, your day 2, so on and so forth, which is more normal. But I actually kind of miss some of the aspects of week-long teaching. So, it's fine, because there's pros and cons to both. Both of them have things that are great and things that are maybe not so great. So a couple of pros specifically for week-long classes is if you're seeing your kids every single day of the week for music class, number one is there's a lot of continuity between the different days, because on Monday we do something, and then on Tuesday we basically pick up where we left off, as opposed to not seeing you until next week, and now I don't really remember where you left off. For the kids, it's really helpful because they're like, oh yeah, we talked about that yesterday, instead of it being like last week or, a week and a half ago. And so it's easier for them to remember things that just happened. And because of that, I found that you could really build on stuff, and the kids learned it so deeply that they didn't forget things. I was so worried. I was like, they're gonna forget everything in the 4 weeks I don't see them. They're not gonna remember anything when I get them back. And that just wasn't true. We would go so deep into concepts that they would actually remember the things when we got back. So don't be stressed about that. They're not gonna forget. Just go really deep into concepts. The other thing that's really helpful is for projects. If you have any kind of projects going on, it is so easy to be able to do projects, because you only have to keep track of like one class for each grade level at a time, instead of keeping track of all the grade levels and all the classes and all the grade levels all of the time, because that can be super stressful on you to try to keep track of all of the stuff. And so projects are so much better. And to my surprise, classroom management got better, because when you have, like a weekly rotation, kid comes on Monday, we have a rough day, and they're like, I don't have to see this lady until next week, okay? It's totally different when I have to see you tomorrow. And so from my perspective, I definitely was better about making sure I nipped things in the bud, because I was like, we're not doing this all week long. And from their perspective, they had to kind of do a similar thing, and they had to be a little bit better, because they have to deal with me again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. And after 5 days, the kids really had like routines and rituals, and like Fridays were always like the best day, because like they're so used to you after having 5 days with you that it's like easy peasy. It also meant that we could do different things. So for example, I do teacher versus student points, and so we would earn points all week long, and then on Friday we got our special game time if we earned enough points. So those are all things that were really helpful with that week-long rotation. Now there are cons as well. One con being Mondays. Every Monday basically felt like the first day of school, because on Monday, I haven't seen you for a long time and you gotta get readjusted to me. And so Mondays usually were a lot of work. Fridays were great, but Mondays were a lot of work in getting back into routines and figuring out who Miss Davis is and what Miss Davis wants and all of those things. So Mondays are definitely a pitfall to the week-long rotation, especially if you have longer rotations. You know, if it's 4 or 5 weeks in between, that's a lot, versus if it's like 2 or 3 weeks, it may not be a huge deal. Another thing, just vocal stamina. If the kids aren't singing every day at home, like they may not be singing, you know, at all for like a month. And so that is one thing to consider as well. Just like in healthy voicing, you have to think about things like that of like, oh, you maybe haven't sung in 4 weeks, and so we need to, you know, maybe take it easy on the first day. Other things, performances got really hard because I can't teach the whole class something for the holiday concert because I saw, you know, this class I haven't seen since October and they're not going to remember anything for the holiday concert. And so that was really difficult for the week-long rotations. And if you're watching this like considering week-long rotations, maybe your principal asked you about it, that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're really big on performances at school, that may not be the best option for you. Now, I got around that with a couple of things, but it's definitely easier when you see the kids on a regular, like once a week basis for performances, instead of like, I haven't seen you since October, so no, you can't even participate in the holiday, you know, winter concert or whatever, because I haven't even seen you. I don't have anything for you to do. So that is definitely something that is much harder. Oh, and one thing I forgot to say in the pros is that it is so much easier to remember what the kids learned. So if we, you know, didn't finish the lesson yesterday, I can remember that now because it was just yesterday. Whereas now that I'm in my 6-day rotations, y'all, I see kids and I'm like, did we learn this song? Did we do this thing? Did I tell you this? I have no earthly idea because I've now seen 5 other 5th grade classes since then, and it just takes so long that it's really difficult to remember those things. So that's something I'm still kind of like working out and piecing together, but that is something that's much easier with the week-long rotation. It's like, oh, we can just pick up wherever we left off yesterday, which is also great if you have days that you don't have school, so you're not just like missing someone for, you know, 2 weeks. Instead, it's just like we can kind of, it's easier to mesh together lessons and accommodate for that in the week-long rotation. So that's a couple of pros and cons. Now let's talk about some things that will help you if you already have this rotation and you're looking and you're like, I don't even know what to do. Trust me, I did it for years. You can handle it and it'll be great. So number 1 is when you're lesson planning, think deep instead of wide. So typically when I would do my lesson plans, I would do 1 or 2 concepts. And if we did 2, it was like one was a main concept and the other one was like a minor concept. And so maybe we're working on So and Me, and then we're also throwing in some rhythm there. Okay, so think 1 or 2 things that we're really trying to hammer in all week. And that gives you that deep understanding that the kids will remember. And so make sure that you are doing that. I also personally like to have themed weeks. And so typically I would pick like, you know, this week is all jungle activities and this week is all Hispanic Heritage Month activities and, you know, different things like that, it just makes me happy, frankly. And so the kids also, I think, enjoyed it and it was a great time. Number 2 is make sure that you repeat yourself. You don't want to like do a song once and then never do it again. You want to have that repetition so the kids really get it deep ingrained in their brains, and so that they have that deep understanding like we already talked about, so that the next time they remember it. And typically the next time on Monday, we kind of start with reviewing what we did last time with similar, you know, the same songs, and maybe, you know, not everything we did last time, but we'll do, especially at the beginning, we'll usually start with something super easy and then we'll do like a song that we did last time, and that kind of helps jog their memory and get them back into like, okay, piecing those things together. So that would be, you know, make sure you repeat yourself, especially on Mondays. Number 3 is make sure your long form planning is on point, because when you look at week-long lessons, if you like me, I had usually 4-week rotations, and so that's basically a month. So I had to figure out like, okay, if we need to know these things by the end of the year, what are we working on each week? And since I'm only picking 1 or 2 things that we're working on each week, I had to be really strategic about what I'm planning so that we can get to the end in time. Now, listen to your kids, don't move forward before they're ready, but do have a plan so that you know where you're headed, so that you're not just like throwing it together. It's a lot easier with weekly rotations to just throw something together and be like, oh, this week we're gonna do this random thing. But when it's week long, you really have to be strategic about planning ahead and making sure, okay, if we need to do this concept in October, then I need to finish this concept in September, okay? Okay, so long form planning has to be on point. One little tip that has really helped me over the past couple of years is having activities for certain days. So instead of sitting down to lesson plan and being like, I need 5 or 6 grade levels worth of activities for 5 days, that's a lot of stuff. And so one thing that helped me a lot was having specific things assigned to specific days. So typically Mondays were some kind of review and or introducing a new concept for the week. Oftentimes with the older kids especially, I would have a centers day. So I usually did like 4th and 5th grade on one day and then 3rd grade on a different day. Because I just have more overlap with 4th and 5th grade. And so that way I always knew that Tuesdays in 3rd grade were centers days and Wednesdays in 4th and 5th grade were centers days. And so when I'm going to lesson plan, I don't have to come up with like a whole lesson. I just think, okay, Tuesday's center day. What kind of centers are we gonna use for this concept? And then I just have to pick those, and it just narrows things down. Anytime that you're lesson planning and you're stressed out, the best thing to do is just narrow it down. So if you have assigned like, this is what we do on Tuesdays, it's less stressful. Fridays were typically game days. So Fridays we would do some kind of movement in the morning at the beginning, and then we would do like review, some sort of assessment, whether that's just me like watching you do something or whether it's like a written assessment, and then we would do our game time, and that was Fridays. And honestly, I loved how super simple Fridays were because I could intentionally make Fridays easy. I can't do that anymore. That was my favorite part. I was like, we're just gonna make Friday super, super, super easy. Next up, when you are planning though, potentially leave one day empty or optional. In a 4-week period or a 5-week period or however long you go without seeing your kids, you probably are gonna have a holiday or a fire drill or an assembly or a testing day, or like things are gonna happen that are gonna mess up your class. And so I found it was really helpful. I only ever planned 4 days. And if we happen to have a week that had an actual 5 days in it, then on that 5th day, I would usually have like an optional thing. So I made it Thursdays so that in my lesson plans it like was laid out right, and if it wasn't Thursday, I just, you know, shifted things around. So Thursdays were makeup days first, so if we didn't finish something, we're gonna finish it, and then I would have some extension options that I could do, but I wasn't gonna like sit there and write a big huge long lesson plan if nobody's actually gonna do it, because we never actually have 5-day weeks. And so I would pick, you know, things that were optional, things that were extra and fun and still related to what we're doing, but maybe not super, super, super necessary. So leave one empty just in case you have those super weird weeks. And the best tip I can ever tell you is to use slides. This is something I tell pretty much every teacher all the time because it is so helpful. My weekly lesson slides. I make my lessons, and I still do this even with my 6-day rotation. I make my lessons and I type them out, you know, for admin and whatever. And then I open up my Google Slides and I have one document for 2nd grade, one document for 3rd grade, etc., etc. And I go to the next slide. So I have my first slide is like links basically to all the other slides, and then I go to the next slide and I have like a welcome to music sheet that has the agenda for the day that frankly is for me and not for the kids. And then after that I have slides for each of the activities we're doing, and sometimes that's like, you know, 1st grade's learning a new song tomorrow and it's frog themed, and so my frog themed, you know, slide literally is just a picture of a frog, because I just need to remember that we're doing a frog song. And so it's not even necessarily always for the kids, but a lot of times it's for me. But that's so helpful with week-long rotations because you're not doing the same thing every day. So it's like 5 days, and so it can be harder to like get into a groove. And it's just so helpful. So I have that, and just for each activity, it's every single thing. So 1st grade tomorrow, we're doing I'm Being Swallowed by a Boa Constrictor. So there's like a little picture of a snake, and then we're doing a jungle song. So I have the lyrics for that. And then we're doing a frog song. So I have a picture of a frog, and then we're listening to a frog piece that I found. And so we're gonna like a classical piece. And so I put the YouTube video in there, and it's just, it's so helpful to have that visual reminder for you and also for the kids, and especially like lyrics. It's really helpful to have it there, and just to have all the visuals, all the everything. You don't have to write a million things on the board. It's great. And lastly is just, you know, to enjoy it, because you know, it actually can be really great if you just don't freak out and you just, you know, try your best and you go for it and don't stress about, you know, the things that you're not getting to do, but instead just focus on the good things that are coming with your fun rotation and focus on having fun with your kiddos, because we have such a special job, and it can be so hard to remember that when life is super stressful and the kids are being crazy. But we have such a special job. Like, not only do we get to teach children, but like we get to bring joy to children. And so like keep that in mind as you are making your lessons and as you're going about your day. It isn't always super joyful, but we get to bring the joy to the school day, and that is a really special place to be. So, you know, that's what I tell myself anytime I'm really stressed. I'm like, I get to bring the joy to the children. And it does actually help, you know, if you, it's like a mantra, just keep saying it and maybe you'll do it. But really, really it is. Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye.